Hello, Giants fans. Welcome to Giants Baseball 101. I'm Gabe Vaughn, your host. This week, we really don't have a whole lot to talk about as the offseason is still moving slowly, at least from the Giants' perspective and who they're targeting right now. But, I mean, you can just consider them fortunate to be in late January now and to really to still have an opportunity to sign some players that are able to make an impact. And I'm going to get into comparing this offseason with last one in just pretty soon. But first, just basically some review. It was most recent that I basically talked about the Giants signing of Jordan Hicks, who's just been a good reliever throughout his career. And they signed him to a big contract. Their plan is to use him as a starter. And while I totally get and understand that plan, I don't think it's a bad idea if they can at least have a plan to stretch him out during spring training and see what comes out of that. It is equally worth noting that at the end of the day, Jordan Hicks needs to pitch where he will be most effective. And if that's in a bullpen role, it's got to be in a bullpen role because he's going to throw meaningful innings out of the bullpen. Don't have an image of him just being a low leverage middle reliever. He really would throw the innings that the Giants would need to turn the game one way or the other. So Hicks has to throw where he's most effective. And if an experiment with him as a starter was not going right, then they shouldn't stick with that experiment for very long. But we don't know, honestly, until we see. Other thing that I don't believe I've talked about yet is Dusty Baker has joined the Giants again as a special assistant to the front office. He was their manager just kind of back in the day, including taking them through the 2002 World Series, which they ultimately lost to the Angels. So it'll be interesting to see if he has the ability to do any good, to make any kind of an impact that would steer the Giants back on the right track. I mean, I don't know, as far as advisors go, like what that could do. And obviously we don't know now how big of a role Baker is actually going to be in as far as decision making. But as of right now, that is where he is, and we'll just have to see, honestly, if it makes a difference. Because I mean, Dusty is definitely a legendary manager. I mean, there's no doubt about that. So, as is their current manager, Bob Melvin. So, I mean, just adding this kind of legendary experience to the team. I mean, we'll see. We'll just have to see, honestly, what that does and what comes of it. So now, just getting back to the topic of the offseason as it is right now. I mean, obviously, Cody Bellinger and Blake Snell still remain unsigned, and I hope the Giants are actively pursuing them. And I'm just not sure that we can know, honestly, how far they're going. But I mean, one thing just to me is fairly certain on Blake Snell. The Giants need to sign another starter. He's a real good one, and he could reasonably be projected to have a really good 2024 season. I understand he's going to demand a longer contract than the Giants might be comfortable with. But this is a situation for the Giants where they have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. That applies to Bellinger too. That applies to just any good free agent out there that they could sign. They have to be comfortable being uncomfortable because it is time for them to get back into a win now mode. And what that is going to take, I don't know. But they have to do whatever it takes. There are going to be some risks, and they've had their share of veteran players being signed to deals that you really can't get rid of, and they're not performing anywhere. They've had their share of that happening, but you remember in those previous years that they also didn't win because they didn't do anything at the trade deadline, even when they were on the margin of kind of doing it. So I wouldn't blame it. I wouldn't blame it completely on big contracts signed by just the Giants administration in previous years. Don't blame it on the wrong thing here. They also didn't win in those final years that we kind of don't like to remember because they didn't get some other stuff done. So just remember that. And lastly, before we close, I just want to compare this offseason to last one, obviously, and I'm not going to make excuses for the Giants at all, because I don't think they can be made. Players don't want to come because of San Francisco. They just don't like the Giants. At some point, I think all of that gets foolish. No excuses. But the offseason, although it is far from what it should have been, it's not as bad, I don't think, as last offseason, because they at least have some guys that there's at least a path for them to make a quality impact if no injuries happen or anything. And I understand, like with Robbie Ray, he can't pitch till the second half. That is a bummer. But and if they sign Jung Hoo Lee too, who, if things go as projected with him, he will be a superstar at the big league level. So I think the conclusion on the offseason is it's far better than last year. It falls short, but you remember that last year, I don't want to make it like the Giants were close to a playoff spot, because they weren't exactly, but I mean, they were close enough that if a few more little things had gone right, they would have been in the playoffs. I mean, you remember that. So you think about if they can come onto the field and be a bit better in 2023, then what could that do? Well, there's at least some reason for optimism and like some hope here. Maybe you think I'm beating a dead horse, because last time I was kind of saying that too, and it didn't happen. But so that is obviously the drawback. But still, I mean, I think things could happen here. And on-field management, you remember too, that like that's changed. And we have to see what Bob Melvin does and how that contrasts with what Gabe Kapler's been doing. Maybe Melvin has the strategy necessary to squeeze out a few more wins. I'm just saying, I'm not making any excuses at all for losing out on guys they shouldn't have lost out on. But these are the reasons why I think we should have some hope for 2024. Thank you for watching. This has been Giants Baseball 101. Please subscribe if you haven't. Also, please leave your questions and comments. You know where to do it. I'll see you next time on Giants Baseball 101.